All right, I'll call to order the Common Council organizational meeting on April 19th at 5:31. We're going to do the council photo later because Jay is running a little bit late. But first, we'll do the swearing in of new or reappointed council members. So the 4 new people can all come up front here and do your official, for the public swearing in. Once we get the flag in place, we will then do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
And to the flag of the United States.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And roll call, please.
Alder Allen is running
Present
late.
on the belt line.
Alder Radafrada.
Here.
Alder Gerhardt.
Here.
Alder Herbst.
Here.
Alder Maldonado.
Here.
Mayor Richardson.
Here.
Alder Strassman.
Here.
Alder Udell.
Here.
Alder Wheeler.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Next is welcome opening remarks. Welcome everyone back. No changes to the council this year, which I think there's a lot of advantages to that because everyone's been through this for at least once, if not twice or 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So that helps a lot, and I think it just enables us to hopefully get even more done. As always, resources are a challenge, and there's a lot that we ask of our staff, and a lot of projects that we're going. We're a growing city, and so there's a lot of needs for that. And so I'm looking forward to the year. Obviously, a lot going to happen this year, and I'm excited for it. So looking forward to it. I don't really have any huge words of wisdom or anything like that, and we only got an hour, so I'll turn it over to Chad.
Well, while there may not be any changes in council, I think it's certainly me as a new addition in the last year since you guys all last reorganized has certainly been an interesting and actually enjoyable experience for me so far in the time that I've been in this role. So I want to thank you guys for all that you've done so far as I've transitioned to this role. Mayor Richardson mentioned he did not necessarily have any words of wisdom. I don't think that I necessarily do either, perhaps. But I will at least go over some things that I would like us all to work collaboratively on over the course of the next year. First and foremost, I certainly want to be a resource for all of you on the council and serve as a liaison between you and city staff. So if you do have any sorts of projects or questions or other information that you're seeking from staff, in particular where there's going to be a notable commitment of time and resources, I would appreciate you coordinating that request with me, as I should have an understanding of what they're currently working on, if they have any fires of the day, so to speak, or other significant projects that might affect their ability to otherwise get that information to you, or at least set an expectation with them as to when they should be able to get that information to you as well. So And if you do have any sorts of communication with staff via email, I would appreciate being included on that as well. Again, just so that I have an understanding of what some of the questions and the issues might be. It helps me be prepared for anything that might potentially come my way as well. So I would also encourage you, I know some of you have already taken advantage of this, but feel free to schedule a meeting with me. I'd be happy to talk about what's happening in City Hall, some of the things that I've seen in the time that I've been in this role, and also look forward to hearing from you and what your observations have been, and where we might find areas of improvement and or identification of things that are going well. I'd also encourage you to take some time, if you haven't done so already, since you are all veterans, so to speak, to sit down with our department heads, schedule some time, and really get an understanding of what their departments are working on each and every day, what are their most pressing issues and concerns, and how they also may be a resource to you as well as the community as a whole. And then finally, I'd like you also, as committee assignments are made here later today, to reach out to the staff contacts for each of those committees. Introduce yourself in case you haven't already had the opportunity to interact with that particular staff contact, and maybe get an overview of what's been going on in that particular committee or commission to help bring you up to speed instead of having to kind of sit in the meetings and then come up to speed over a brief period of time. So above all else, I do want to remind folks again that I view myself as a resource for you. I appreciate all that you do for our community, and by all means, please let me know how I can further help you and the council as a whole serve our community.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have City Attorney Valerie Zisman here to talk about a number of different things. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and great to see all of you back here. I will keep my remarks fairly brief for two reasons. One, all of you, as was previously mentioned, are returning to this body, and so you're probably fairly familiar with what I have to share with you. The other reason is that this isn't meant to be an exhaustive training for you. We are actually having some conversations about providing some more in-depth training on open meetings and public records for both common council members as well as committee and commission and board members, and that will be forthcoming. But the other thing that I want to point out to you is that I really can't teach you everything you need to know about public meetings and records in a training anyhow. What my intention is really to do is just to identify these topics for you so that you know what to look for and identify questions. And when you do, please know that my door is open and that I'm here to assist you in resolving any potential issues that you might identify. So this is really just meant to put these topics on your radar so that you know to come and ask when you run into something like that. As I mentioned, my role is to provide you with guidance and advice. My job is the city attorney, and as members of the council, you can certainly and should feel welcome to come to me with legal questions that you may have that pertain to city business. I should point out that I can't represent any of you individually, so I'm not just an attorney. You can ask any legal question you want, or of course feel free to answer or to ask, but you may not get the answer or an answer that you want. But as far as your city dealings and your role as alders, please feel free to come and ask a question. The other thing I want to mention to you is that my job is to provide you with guidance and with advice. What I do not do is enforcement of these rules and laws. Enforcement for public records, as well as open meetings compliance, and any kind of conflicts issues that you hopefully will not run into, would be done by the district attorney for Dane County or for the attorney general. So if you believe someone is violating, or if anybody believes that one of you is violating something in the open records law, public records, open meetings, or conflicts, that is where that complaint would be filed. I would not be doing any prosecuting. So I mention this for two reasons. One, from time to time I've had members complain to me that they believe some rules aren't followed and they feel frustrated by my lack of enforcement, and so I just want to let you know right away, I don't do enforcement. What I do is provide guidance and certainly alert you to an issue. But the other reason I mention this is just to make you aware that if somebody were to file a complaint against you personally, that is where that complaint would go. It would go to the Attorney General or the District Attorney. So feel free to come to me. You don't have to worry about asking a question and then getting in trouble with me because now I found out that something has happened. Again, my role is really to just help you wade through these issues, hopefully prevent any problems from arising in the first place, but should there be issues, help you resolve them as much as we can together. So with that, I will spend just a little bit of time on open meetings, and then we can pause for questions if you'd like. Does that sound good? Unless somebody has questions now? Okay, fantastic. I don't see any hands, I just see nods of heads. Great. So open meetings law is a Wisconsin state law that requires all government meetings to be open, to be noticed, and to be accessible. And so the big picture here is that city business needs to be done in public. This is important for a number of reasons, but we can certainly start with the fact that it is the law, and so we have to do it. There's certainly many good reasons why we have to do it in terms of policy. But first and foremost, this is a law that applies to city government because it applies to us by law, and so we have to follow it. So important things to know about city meetings are that they have to be open to the public. And so that is why even in the pandemic, we had provided an opportunity for people to come in person if they wanted to, even though we kind of tried to discourage that and instead provided these other opportunities for folks to participate remotely. But people have to be able to come to these meetings. These meetings have to be noticed. So it doesn't really help very much for the community to have open meetings that they don't know about, right? So city staff put together the notices, and they notice all of the city meetings. The important thing to know here is that we need to know that there's a meeting in order to notice it. Of course, common council meetings happen on a regular schedule, but as we get to kind of conversations about quorum, if there is a meeting amongst you that staff don't know about, then we can't put together a notice. So do make sure that if you plan to conduct city business at a meeting where several of you will be present, that you communicate with the city administrator and the city clerk and myself to address that. The big takeaway here is that I think where people tend to get in trouble is when they start talking about city business not at a common council meeting. So for example, in a conversation amongst yourselves or at another event that you might run into each other. And so potentially we start running into a problem where all of a sudden you're having an impromptu meeting, and if it's impromptu, of course, it's not noticed because nobody knew that it was going to be happening. So the important thing to remember is that if you want to talk about city business, it needs to happen at these meetings, and it should be on the agenda. Now, sometimes things might come up that aren't on the agenda that folks from the community will come in and want to talk about. We call those non-agenda items. And there's absolutely no problem with just about anybody from our community coming in here, and even if it's not on the agenda, talking to you about their concerns. So somebody might come in and let you know that they're worried about their garbage pickup not being done adequately, and there's nothing on the agenda about that. Or they have concerns about recycling or their neighborhood park or whatever the case may be. There's absolutely no problem with all of you listening to that person that comes in and hearing them and perhaps wanting to take some action in the future. But you do need to abstain from discussing that matter on that date because there was no notice on the agenda that that would be discussed by you, by this body. And so if you want to do some follow-up, the appropriate way to do that would be to work with the city administrator and the city clerk to get this on the agenda so that you can appropriately discuss that matter. So I hope that makes sense. I think all of you are probably familiar with how to get something on an agenda in that process, but just very briefly, I'll touch on that. Generally speaking, the agenda is put together with the city administrator and the city clerk at the direction of the mayor. So if you want to see something on the agenda, your two options are you can either talk to the mayor, who will work with staff to get things on the agenda that aren't already on there, or two alders can sponsor an item to be placed on the agenda as well for the discussion by the council. So With that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to stop there for a moment. Otherwise, I'll just move on to quorum issues. I don't see any questions, so I'll move on to quorum. So quorum, I think you're probably all familiar with the concept of quorum. It's fairly straightforward, except for when it isn't. Generally speaking, a quorum is just a number of you that is sufficient to determine the outcome of an action. So that seems fairly straightforward. Where things can get a little dicey is when we start talking about matters that might require a supermajority, or bodies or meetings where there's fewer than all the members in attendance. And so sometimes as few as 3 alders can block an item. For instance, with a budget amendment where you might need more than the majority, if you need 6 votes to pass a measure, then just 3 alders could block a measure, therefore determining the outcome. So potentially 3 of you could constitute a quorum in some situations. And so that's just something to keep in mind. You know, a really conservative view would be for me to say that anytime 2 of you are in a room together, you have a potential quorum and therefore you should run in opposite directions. I'm not here to tell you that, but I do want you to just keep something, you know, in mind. And generally speaking, if you want to work with another alder on a resolution or on something, on some kind of project, I would recommend keeping it to 1 other alder and then trying to keep the discussion of that item to these meetings. So I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, of course, contact me. As I mentioned, quorum's fairly straightforward, except for when things get kind of dicey in terms of either the number of members in attendance or the type of vote that you'll be taking. There's also this idea of a walking quorum, which I think you're probably all familiar with as well. But I just want to touch on it again. The idea of a walking quorum is that, you know, in the old days it used to be somebody picking up the telephone. Now I think you're probably as likely to run into a potential walking quorum using text messages or emails. But basically it's rather than 4 or 5 of you gathering in a room together, you do it via some form of communication that's kind of instantaneous enough that it looks like a discussion. So the Attorney General has opined that at least potentially text message communication or email communication could constitute a walking quorum, depending on the substance and kind of the nature of that conversation. But if you're having a conversation through email, for instance, because a staff member emails council and mayor listserv, and then another alder replies all with something of substance on that topic, and then somebody else replies all, and all of a sudden it really starts looking like you're basically having a conversation, except for you're conducting it via email rather than in an open, accessible, and noticed meeting. We can run into a problem there as well. Now, that doesn't apply to technical, logistical, scheduling kind of conversations. So if you're emailing and you're asking, are all of you available for a special meeting on this date? That's not an issue. If we're talking about a point of order in terms of, hey, what's the process for getting this done? That's not really a concern as well. But what becomes a concern is if we're now talking about the very thing that you would be talking about at this meeting, at the meeting of the Common Council, but now you're doing it by email, and the public doesn't have an opportunity to be present and to see what's happening. The other thing I want to mention is that you are humans. I'd like to recognize that. You may very well have relationships with each other outside of this role as an alder, perhaps as a result of it, but nonetheless, you may run into each other at the bar, at a barbecue, at each other's birthday parties, and that is absolutely fine. You're allowed to have contact with each other. So you don't have to publicly notice your birthday party just because you're going to involve your fellow alders. What makes an open meetings violation is not just the number of you that are attending, but what you're talking about and the purpose of that meeting. So if you're at a birthday party and all 9 of you are there, that is not at all a problem. Just don't talk about city business. Talk about the weather, talk about sports, talk about your kids, talk about politics and religion if that's where you want to go with it. You know, that's no problem there, at least not when it comes to open meetings, okay? So again, just a reminder that all of these rigid rules really only apply to your conversations that deal with the kind of actions that you take as elected officials here. So I hope that makes sense. Any questions on any of that? Okay, I see no questions. So I will then move on to just to briefly touch on conflicts of interest. The big takeaway for conflict of interest issues for you is that there may come a time where you may feel the need to recuse yourself because you think there may be a conflict of interest for you. Generally speaking, a conflict of interest is when you stand to benefit by essentially a virtue of your position, and you get some sort of personal or financial benefit, you or somebody in your immediate family, as a result of the action that you take. And so if you're ever in that situation and you want to recuse yourself, that would mean that you would not vote on that matter, but you also would want to avoid discussing it with the council as well, because you don't want to influence other people's votes. Not only do you not want to make the vote at that point, but you also don't want to sway other members to vote a certain way. And so what I would recommend you do is just recuse yourself at the outset and then just not participate in the discussion, not participate in the vote, and you can just state on the record that you're recusing yourself. You may also wish to recuse yourself at some point. Even though you may not have a conflict of interest, you may choose to recuse yourself for what might be called a perceived conflict of interest. So in other words, technically, legally, there isn't a conflict, but there's an appearance of a conflict, and you would just rather not even give the appearance of being impartial or being partial in a matter. And that's perfectly fine as well, and you can do that. Yes. Well, Dave, let's say you own a landscaping company and your company is looking at putting together a bid for some services done to the city. You probably want to stay as far away from that action as possible in that case, right? So, because otherwise, if you get it, you get a financial benefit directly because it's your company that's going to benefit from it.
That's a direct conflict of interest.
Absolutely, yes.
You were just mentioning indirect.
Oh, a perceived conflict
Perceived,
of interest. Sure. So, you know, sometimes we might have somebody who might say, well, I work for this company. It isn't my company. I don't work on this account at all. I'm not going to get any financial benefit, whether the city gets this contract or not, but it still does, it just looks bad, and I just don't want to be a part of that. Or it's only immediate family members, and this is my second cousin, so technically not my immediate family member. But again, I just don't want, I'd rather not participate in this. I just feel better telling the public I'm staying away from this. Legally, you don't have to, but you can choose to do that. Does that make sense?
Good examples, thank you.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Great. So if you have a situation where you feel like, is this a conflict? Isn't it? I'm not sure. Pick up the phone, call me. I'm happy to help you walk through that, and we can figure it out together. And then you can come to the determination that either, yes, you should recuse yourself, or no, you don't have to, but maybe you want to anyway. I had a few of those over the years where somebody says, well, you know what? I don't have to, but I'm going to anyhow, and that's absolutely fine. You can do that. Okay? Again, the big reminder here is if you're going to recuse yourself, don't participate in the discussion as well. Just pretend like you're not present for that portion of the meeting. You don't have to necessarily leave the room, but just don't discuss it. Does that make sense? The other item I want to bring up is sometimes you might get offers to, like, tickets to fancy events. That might sound lovely. That's something of value that you're receiving by virtue of your position, so I would strongly encourage you to decline those. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get samples at Costco. Those are available to everybody, and you're not getting them by virtue of your position. So feel free to go ahead and keep eating those if that's, you know, if that's something you like. But if, you know, the big question for you to always ask yourself is, am I getting special treatment because I'm an alder? Is somebody offering me something because of my position on the council? If the answer is yes, then that's a really good thing to turn around and walk away from. Make sense? Great. Okay. Then lastly, I just want to mention to you the public records law. Again, you're probably all aware with public records. Some of you may have had to deal with some public records requests in the past. Admittedly, they can be burdensome and at times a challenge, both for you folks as well as city staff. I know that in some regards they can make our lives very difficult, but the purpose of the public records law, much like the open meetings law, is to make government transparent. And so the goal is to make sure that people in the community have access to these records, because really these records are all about city business and how government conducts its business. And so I won't get into depth about what does or doesn't constitute a record because there are, a lot of exemptions and exceptions and a balancing test. But I will tell you what you need to know, and that is, one, you are custodians of your own records, and that means you're responsible for producing those records. And when I say responsible, I mean under the law, you're responsible for producing those records. Now, as elected officials of this body, you get an email account on city servers, and I would strongly encourage you to conduct city business using that email address as opposed to any personal email address you may have. The reason for that is because we have city staff, we have an IT department, and a clerk who would much rather not do this, but she will because it's her job. She will help go through all of the records that are responsive to potential requests, and sometimes it's in the thousands of records, right? And it is definitely zero fun, but we will do it, and we will work through those records and provide them to the requester if they are on city servers. If these records reside on your own personal servers, it is your responsibility to do that. Whether it's on your personal email or on your work email, doesn't matter. What matters is the content of that record. And so if it's city business, if you're discussing city business on your email, that is your personal email address, then, and somebody makes a request, you are still responsible for producing that record. So I would strongly encourage you to avoid using things that aren't your email to conduct city business. I know it can be tempting, but text messages, personal emails, other forms of messaging, like, I don't know, Facebook Messenger or other types of social media, all of those things can potentially create a record. Again, there's a thing called transient records, right? So if we're talking about texting somebody to say, hey, can you call me, or are you available for lunch, or can we get together and talk on this date, or something of that nature, that doesn't necessarily create a record because there's not much substance there. But once you start having substance, once you're starting to have a discussion beyond just, could you please call me, you really need to be able to produce that, okay? And you may not want to have your phone. You may not have access to that Facebook account. You may not want to go through 7 years worth of emails to find everything that might be responsive. It is burdensome. And so if you conduct that on city email, we will help you take care of that. And if you don't, good luck. Hopefully you won't run into too much trouble there. So as I mentioned, scheduling issues, please call me. That's not really going to be responsive probably to most record requests anyway. But anything that you're starting to talk about government business, keep it on your emails. I think that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Anything else? Gabriella, go ahead.
Just one clarification. My understanding is that personal notes, like written notes, are not subject to open records requests. Is that true?
Well, it depends on what you mean by personal note.
I mean, the notes I take in my notebook at meetings.
So it may not be, if it's a note, truly, but if it's, potentially it could be. So I think you and I maybe can talk more about the substance of what's in there and kind of what you do with them, and give me a call. We'll work through that.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much, Valerie.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, please call anytime. Thank you.
All right, moving along to election of council president. I will open the floor for nominations for council president. Are there any nominations? Dave?
I'd like to nominate Randy Udell.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jay. Do you accept, Randy?
I do accept, yes.
All right. Anyone else? Seeing none. Going once, going twice. Sold. All right, I will close the nominations. And typically, if there's more than one person, we have a secret ballot. Since there's only one person, I don't think a secret ballot is necessary unless someone disagrees. But we can go right. Do you want to say something before we vote or after? Either way.
Well, I do have some prepared notes.
All right, go for it.
Are they subject to the open records law?
It very well could be. All right. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor to share why I'm running for a second term as common council president. This year for Fitchburg is going to be like no other as we welcome the town of Madison residents to Fitchburg and bring them into the community. In addition to welcoming new residents, Fitchburg needs significant investments in stormwater, roads beyond our major arteries, more affordable housing, plus infrastructure upkeep and improvement. These are only some of the significant challenges we face, and they will stretch our resources both financially and staffing as well, but will also require tough choices. We need a strong leadership that, with a proven track record of bringing opposing sides together and ensuring our government works for everyone to guide us through this time. I know I am this type of leader. I believe in mutual respect, valuing differences of opinion, listening, working towards the common good, increasing our community's relationship with our government, leveraging our amazing city staff, and wisely investing our tax dollars to increase efficiency and affordability. In addition to the experience I have serving in this role and as District 4 Alder, I bring my financial expertise as the state treasurer for a major political party, responsible for managing a $45 million budget, and my 30-plus years of professional work experience in a private sector Fortune 500 company. Fitchburg will face many demands this coming year, but working together, we can face these challenges head-on and together, and I say together, we can move Fitchburg forward. I would greatly appreciate your vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, we can go ahead and vote. All in favor of approving Randy as council president, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. And any abstentions? All right, congratulations for another year as president.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Do you have appointments for standing committees ready?
I do.
All right, go ahead and do those.
Do you want me to read?
Yes.
Or do you want me to pass
Go
it
ahead
out?
and read.
Oh, I love it when you read.
We've already removed a portion of that, Jay. All right, starting with the Finance Committee. Chair, myself, Vice Chair, Jim Wheeler, and then Gabriella Gerhart. Personnel Committee, Gabriella Gerhart, Chair, Joe Maldonado, Vice Chair, Julia Rada-Frada. Public Safety Committee, Dave Herbst, Chair, Shannon Strassman, Vice Chair, and Jay Allen.
All right, thank you. All right, moving along to appointments of council members to committee and commissions by myself. I already emailed this out, so there's no surprises there. Dave is going to be the Chair of Public Works again and Commission on Aging Well. Joe is on Housing Committee and Bicycling Committee. Julia is on Parks Committee and Tree Advisory. Gabriella is on RCC and TTC. Jay is on Library and HNI. Shannon is on EMS and Landmarks Preservation. Jim is on Public Works and CETA. And then Randy is on Plan, CETA, and Ag and Rural Affairs. All right, mayoral appointments of citizen members to committee commissions for reappointments. This year, anyone who was interested in reappointment, I put up for reappointment. So all these people were interested. There was no positions where someone said I want to be reappointed. I did not reappoint them. Is there a motion to approve the reappointments?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jay, second by Gabriella. Anyone that you want to remove and do separately at all? All right, seeing none. All in favor of the reappointments, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right. New appointments, and we'll have people who are here. We'll do these one by one. I don't think Paul is here. Mark Lee, though, if you'd like to come up and just tell us a little bit about yourself. This is for the library board. He's the school representative. So on the school board, or on the library board, sorry, one of the members is supposed to be from one of the school districts that serves Fitchburg. So there's been someone from Madison on there. They have stepped down. I think they're changing jobs. And Mark is a librarian in Oregon and has interest. So go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. My name is Mark Lee. I live in Middleton, Wisconsin, but for the last 30 years I have taught in the Oregon School District, 14 years as a first grade teacher and 16 years as a library media specialist. In my role in the district, I am half-time the library media specialist in Brooklyn Elementary, serving K-4 students. The other half of my job is the district library coordinator coordinating library services between all 7 buildings in the Oregon School District, including Forest Edge Elementary here in Fitchburg. I guess that's pretty much me.
Perfect. Is there any questions at all for Mark? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Jay, seconded by Shannon, I think that was. Yep. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, next we have John Sarunian, who's online with us. John, you're also up for the library board. Would you like to tell us a bit about why you're interested?
I'm interested in getting involved in city government as well as the library, and who knows what happens from there. But I want to thank you very much for the opportunity. I'll do my best. That's all.
All right, any questions for John? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jay, seconded by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, that's approved. I don't see Renee Eastman either. I'm assuming you're Adam? All right, Adam, come on up for the Zoning Board of Appeals. Tell us why you're interested in that.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. My name is Adam Guile. I am the supervisor of rights-of-way and surveying at Madison Gas and Electric. I also own my own land surveying company that I sort of do as a weekend hobby to be more active in land divisions outside of MG&E. We pretty much deal with easements and don't get into the scope of land division much. So I am a licensed surveyor in Wisconsin, and probably one of, I think there's maybe 15 of us that are federally licensed, so licensed by the Bureau of Land Management as well. I serve as the vice president of the Madison area chapter of surveyors and as the chair of the education committee for the Wisconsin Society of Land Surveyors. So if you're seeing a trend, land surveying is deeply ingrained in me. So.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Adam? Or a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jay, seconded by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, that's approved. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
We will try and get Paul and Renee here next week then, since they weren't able to make it. And we have a couple other ones for people who couldn't make it tonight that will be next week. Still have a few openings though. So also next up is resolutions. We do this every year. First one is designating the official newspaper for notices and things like that. Would someone like to make the motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have to actually read that one since it's a resolution? Do you know, Tracy? Yeah, if someone could.
I'll move resolution R7222 designating the official newspaper.
Right,
Second.
Seconded by Jay. Any questions at all? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, Gabriella, would you like to do the next one first, too?
I move approval of resolution R7322 designating official posting locations.
Second.
Seconded by Jay. Any questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is also approved. Next council meeting is next week, and committee of the whole is 1 week and 1 day. We'll do a photo after we adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Gabriella,
moved.
sorry, Gabriella.
Oh my.
Can I make a quick announcement?
Sure.
Yeah, so the spring waterway cleanup for the city of Fitchburg is this Saturday, April 23rd, starting at 9 a.m., 9 to 11 a.m. There's a whole bunch of different locations. You can just show up on the day, grab a bag, and go out and start cleaning up our waterways. So there's information on the city website, or feel free to email me or call Chad, and we'll give you the information. Hope to see some of you out there. Thanks.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jay, seconded by Shannon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, thank you, and let's do a photo. I think we're gonna go outside.